Hi, Kristen, are you on?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So far, it's just the two of us. Lisa should be hopping on here in a minute.
Okay.
Is Catherine is the name of your dietitian, correct?
Yes.
Okay. She plans to join still, as far as you
Yes.
know?
Yeah,
Okay.
as far as I know, our offices are in different locations at the hospital, so
Gotcha. That makes sense.
she'll be calling in, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. How was your weekend?
It was good. My best friend just had her first baby, so we got to visit them.
Oh, that's exciting. Did she have a boy or a
Yeah.
girl?
It was a girl, and they didn't know, so it was a big surprise.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was busy. So I'm
Yeah.
I need one more day of weekend to recover from my weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. But it was good. All right, I see Lisa signing on.
Hello?
Hi, is that Lisa?
Hey, it's Lisa. Hey, Sally, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good. We have Kristen on the line and we're just waiting on Catherine, the dietitian.
Okay, great. Hey, Kristen, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, no problem.
Sally, are you going to run the slide deck on your end?
Yeah, I was planning on it. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's great. I just was making sure that I didn't rapidly search for it and pull it up.
You're good. I will send Catherine an email real quick.
Okay, I was just about to say the same thing.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks.
See you, Kristen.
Okay. See if we get her. Do you know if she does clinic visits today, Kristen?
You know, I'm actually not sure.
Okay. I was just curious. Maybe she got caught up with a patient.
I think she is, because I think she was the one that said that this time worked for her the best because of that.
Okay.
So, I wonder if we want to get started, just because, I mean, we have like a full hour of stuff.
Okay.
I'm recording it as well, so I can send it to her if she misses anything.
That works, and I can always follow up with her too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll join, but I think, yeah, that we should get started because we're going to run out of time, I think. So.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen, or have I not shared it yet?
I can't see it.
Yeah, neither can
Okay.
I.
Then that is on me. I haven't shared it. Okay. It should be showing up now.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm going to go through everything in this deck so that we can record it, just in case the dietitian doesn't come on the call today. So some of this stuff will be more or less applicable to you, but we'll go through everything. So and then my colleague Heather Kaplan, this is Lisa Vapari, and my colleague Heather Kaplan she'll likely be joining us maybe midway through the call. She had another meeting, but we'll hop on here as soon as she can as well. So she may be chiming in as we go through. So next slide. So today what we want to talk about is at the beginning of the study, well, way before you guys enrolled your first participant, you went through training on how to do the baseline visits and the screening and all of that. And now we want to talk about, since it's much more close in time and relevant for your team, we want to talk about some of the dietitian and CRC touch points that are coming up soon for your first participant. So that's what we're going to be going over today. The dietitian study visits, the timeline in general for it, the in-clinic visits when they happen and what you do, the phone follow-up visits when they happen and what you do, and then some real specifics for dietitians around really what to think about during those contacts and what to assess. Next slide. So this is just a timeline reminder, which probably is, next slide, pretty fresh in your head and known to you, but just to give you that reminder again. So the green line shows the entire study, which is about 8 months. And your participant, I believe, right now is in the Diet A1, the second green box. There, is that right or no?
Yes.
Or are we still in? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there are two different types of dietitian and CRC touch points in the study. The first are the in-clinic visits, which are represented on the top of the screen. So those two blue boxes on top. So the first one happens about 2 weeks into the first diet, and then the second one happens about 2 weeks into the second diet. And those are in-person and clinic visits. And we'll talk in detail in a minute about what happens at those visits. And then those boxes along the bottom, there are 4 phone call touch points with the dietitian. You won't, as a CRC, you won't necessarily be talking to patients at that time, maybe other than to schedule those if they haven't been scheduled in clinic, or if the dietitian tells you they need some specific follow-up. But those phone call visits happen around week 4 to 5, so the midpoint of each of the 4 diets, and ideally are timed around the diet diary and having that back to give real specific nutrition feedback to families, and we'll talk about that in a second too. So that's the timeline, and those are the visits that we are going to be focusing on right now. So the dietitian in-clinic follow-up visits happen, just like I said, 2 time points, 2 weeks into diet A1, 2 weeks into diet B1. Next slide. Okay. And so from the dietitian perspective, so what we're going to do in this first section is just talk a little bit about this visit and what needs to happen and when. And like I said, it's both the dietitian and the CRC who are involved. So Sally and I are going to kind of split this up and tag team it. I'm going to talk about the dietitian components, and then she's going to talk about the CRC components. So we're going to kind of flip-flop back and forth. So from the dietitian perspective, here's a high-level overview of what needs to happen. The dietitian is going to meet with the family, and she's really going to be assessing the transition to the study. Like, how has it gone to transition to this diet? We know that this is an important touch point about 2 weeks into the families working with the SCD diet or MSCD diet. They need some support. It's a good time to continue their education, and it's really an important time to assess things like weight and the types of foods they're eating to make sure that they're doing okay nutritionally, that they're not avoiding foods, large groups of foods, that they're getting in what they need, to take a look at their weight and make sure that there's no significant problems with weight loss. So that's really why families are coming into clinic at this point in time. So they'll get, and looking for any real significant diet side effects or new or worsened symptoms. So that's really what the dietitian is going to be doing. So part of it is to continue to expand on the knowledge and the resources they have. And then the other part is really to assess them nutritionally, assess weight, and assess for side effects. Next slide.
And for you, Kristen, as the study coordinator, so what you are going to kind of focus on during this study visit is making sure that the dietitian and the family have all of the study resources that they need for the visit. So any of those participant handouts or anything like that. You're going to review the participant symptom tracking data, as well as upcoming study milestones. So making any appointments that they need, going over anything that they need to get done before they come back and see you. You're going to review any questions, concerns, or barriers that they have regarding participation and ensure appropriate follow-up with the PI regarding any adverse events that occur. And then you're going to complete any of the electronic CRFs.
Okay.
Okay. And so in terms of like what you need for the visit, and all of this is detailed in the SOP that we have for the visit, but some of the basic things that you're going to need is the 2-week dietitian in clinic follow-up checklist. And so we actually have a picture of that down at the bottom of the screen. This was a companion document developed to go along with the SOP. These are super handy. It's really just a great cheat sheet of what you need and then what you do at the visit. And if you go through that during the visit and can check off all those boxes, you should be, really set. You've really kind of covered all the basic things. So wanted to remind people, sorry, don't forget about those, because I know I sort of forgot about those until I started preparing this slide deck and was looking at the SOP, and I'm like, oh yeah, we have this cool checklist. That's super helpful. So that's a great tool. And then you're going to also, the dietitian also is going to want to have the produce participant folder for reference, because so many good things in there that she may want to pull out for people. Blank 3-day diet diaries in case the participant, says they need more, they lost them, they don't know where they are. Really important to give them more. And then the dietitian visit log CRF, dietitians will fill that out on paper and then give it to the CRC for entry, and also an adverse event CRF for reference, just in case symptoms are, worsening of symptoms or any problems or issues are reported. They'll need to work with you to fill that out, so to have that for reference would be helpful, so they make sure they're asking the right questions.
And for the study coordinator, so we also have a checklist as well, which you probably know about. This isn't a required document for you to use. You don't have to upload it to Zythos or anything like that, but we really just encourage it because it's really like that snapshot of like, these are the key points you want to make sure that you cover during the study visit. So we definitely encourage everybody to use that. And we created one for both the dietitian and the study coordinator that covers your activities, your specific activities. You're also going to need, again, like Lisa said, the participant folder in case the dietitian or the family needs anything. If the family needs any of the resources out of it, like they lost something since their baseline enrollment visit, you can just give it to them out of that. And then we have all of those documents up on Zythos, so you could just reprint those out and replenish your sites folder. You're also going to want the diet diary SOP just to kind of remind you of the key points to cover with the diet diaries and the families. The families will receive all of the diet diaries that they need in their participant folder at the baseline enrollment visit, but in case they lose some or think they don't have them, just bring a couple blank 3-day diet diaries to make sure that you can give those to them and that they have that. You're going to also want to give them 2 stool collection kits. So we kind of broke this down. They get 1 stool collection kit at the baseline, and then we're going to give them the remaining 2 kits at those 2 in-clinic dietitian visits, just to kind of break it up, because as you know, they're big and bulky and we don't want to give them all 4 all at once. So hopefully this will make it a little bit easier on them. You'll also want the stool collection instructions, the paper version of the dietitian visit log CRF, so that Catherine, the dietitian, can use that. You might need the adverse event CRF just in case anything occurs, and the subject disposition at study completion or disposition CRF in case the participant has to drop out or is withdrawn.
Okay, so before the in-clinic visit, the dietitian's responsibilities are, before the participant comes in, to review their symptoms and their weight data on the Eureka platform. So all that data is there, and be prepared and take a look for symptoms and weight changes or concerns, and then also note adherence to the tracker completion, so that can be part of your discussion, whether they're doing a great job or if they're struggling a little bit, to be able to talk to them about it either way.
And I think I just saw another caller hop on. Catherine, are you on the training?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got stuck in rounds.
Hi, no problem. That's okay. We just started diving into, we're reviewing the 2 different dietitian visits that we have. So we're starting with those in-clinic dietitian visits, the one that you should have coming up for your first participant. So that's where we're at.
Okay, great.
We're also recording this, and we have the slides and everything. Kristen said she can kind of brief you on everything that you've missed. So we'll catch you up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And let me know if you don't see the slides on the screen for whatever reason once you get on.
Okay, great.
Okay, and so before the visit, the study coordinator responsibilities are to provide the dietitian with the participant folder handouts, as well as the paper version of the dietitian visit log CRF and a blank 3-day diet diary. You're also going to want to ensure that the dietitian is able to access the Eureka platform so that they can get in there and review the participant symptoms and weight data if they're collecting the weights.
And then during the in-clinic, during the visit, when the participant actually comes in, the dietitian's responsibilities are, there are several. So first, confirm the diet that the participant is on is consistent with what you're thinking they're on and what's in the study records. Conduct the standard dietitian assessment, per your center standards, and document that in the medical record as you typically would. And then you want to perform an anthropometric assessment. You want to evaluate weight, height, BMI, and their weight history since starting the study. A big part of what I had mentioned earlier, a big part of why we have people come in at this point in time is we want to make sure that they're doing okay weight-wise on the study, and that they haven't dropped too much weight. And so taking a look at that is really important. If there's unplanned weight loss, if weight loss if unplanned weight loss occurs, but it's less than 5%, then you just want to, do your ongoing monitoring as needed. If unplanned weight loss is occurring and it's greater or equal to 5%, then you want to do some much more close monitoring and active management around weight with the participant. Talk with them about, snacks and things like that. And if unplanned weight loss of greater than 7.5% occurs, it results in automatic withdrawal from the study at any point because it's just too much. And just to mention that we did change at one point in our study criteria that it's to say specifically it's unplanned weight loss. One of our first participants who was enrolled in the study actually was hoping to be able to lose some weight. And so we wanted to make sure that we're really targeting to people who don't need or want to lose the weight around weight loss. Continuing on with dietitian responsibilities. So after the anthropometrics, you want to discuss symptom tracking data that you reviewed on the Eureka platform. So if, definitely looking at stool frequency, consistency, the pain interference, the GI symptoms, looking to see what people are reporting about those things, looking to see if there's any new side effects, any worsening of symptoms, things that you should be talking about with the PI of the study or that need to be considered an adverse event. And then and helping people, realize that if there's not changes, that's really A-okay. They're only 2 weeks into the study. And sometimes people actually experience more symptoms in the early staging of the STD before things get better. So taking a look at that, and then looking really importantly at adherence to the daily tracking. The more data that people put in, the better the answers come back. The statistics that we will be running on this are highly dependent on lots of data points. So if they have a lot of data points, it's going to be much more reliable, the answers that we have. So even if their answers are the same every single day, having those data points in there are really important and encouraging people to do that. High adherence, people who are entering, above 75%, really reinforce and congratulate them on their successes. If people are really struggling with adherence to entering data, then please problem solve with them what the barriers are, remind them of the importance, pull in the study coordinator or the PI if needed to problem solve around, what's getting in the way of recording that stuff. Because literally, one day a week they're entering a couple more questionnaires, but on a daily basis, it literally takes less than a minute to put those answers in. So it's really quick. Next slide. Continuing with what the dietitian's responsible for at this visit. Like I said, evaluating diet side effects for sure, worsen symptoms. Part of that will be when you're talking about, what you're seeing on the platform. But you also want to ask about if they've had any allergic reactions to components of the diet, any new or worsened things like bloody stools, abdominal pain, diarrhea, gas, bloating. And then again, like we talked about, anything that seems like a diet-related side effect, worsening of symptoms, you're going to want to pull in their provider, the study PI, as appropriate and consider whether any of this is adverse events. You'll want to evaluate the nutritional adequacy of what their the diet. If they've had any new labs, particularly vitamin D levels, you want to take a look at those. You want to consider if vitamin D supplementation is necessary if they haven't, if they're not on a supplement for vitamin D already. Next slide. You'll want to look at the probiotics and supplements if they're taking any and refer them to SCD legal supplements. Again, evaluate use of antacids and, the need plus or minus for those. If this is the first dietitian visit, which it will be for you guys in clinic, for this particular patient, review the diet staging, confirm that the participant fully transitioned to the correct randomized diet. We've heard stories, not in our particular study, but in previous studies where people kind of stay in that staging and they don't go all the way to the end and move forward to the full diet. So really making sure it's complete because it's only supposed to be a couple of days, and then be assessing if they did it as advised, and then assessing the participants' experience on the diet, benefits, successes they're having, struggles and concerns they're having, any specific foods or food groups that are being avoided, their ability to adhere to the diet, their understanding of it, and really using this as an opportunity to continue education and expanding on their education. you'll be asked to evaluate your perspective of their adherence to the diet on the case report form that you have, and we'll walk through those questions in a little bit to just talk about how to respond to those. And like we said, assessing for any adverse or events or serious adverse events, and continuing diet education. And giving any other, recommendations diet-wise or, clinically that you think are important for this patient's success and health. And then documenting all of this on the dietitian visit log CRF paper form.
During the visit, the study coordinator responsibilities will be to address the tracking adherence, like Lisa just talked about. Suboptimal is less than 75% of the time. If that happens, work with the dietitian and the site PI if necessary, as well as the family to problem solve any barriers. If they're doing well, if they're tracking greater than 75% of the time, congratulate the families and just reinforce how well they're doing. You'll provide the dietitian family with, again, any resources that they need as needed during the visit. You'll review upcoming milestones with the family, making sure that you cover that the next 3-day diet diary should be completed approximately 3 weeks after starting their current diet period, and make sure that they know how to correctly fill out the diet diary and return it to the study coordinator at the site. You're also going to give the family the two stool kits and go through the stool collection instructions. I know you've already gone through them before, but we want to keep reinforcing how to do it correctly. So go through those instructions with them and make sure that you emphasize that they should only send in the stool samples Sunday through Thursday morning, because it is an overnight sample that is getting FedExed overnight, so we don't want it arriving at Seattle on the weekends when nobody is going to be there to collect it. You're also going to confirm upcoming appointments. So they'll have the dietitian phone follow-up approximately 4 to 5 weeks into the diet period, and ideally this occurs once the nutrition assessment is returned from Seattle. They'll also have their standard of care visit after the next diet transition, so that'll be approximately 6 weeks from the date of this in-clinic dietitian visit that you're at. And if the first dietitian in-clinic, the first dietitian in-clinic visit, you're going to confirm the next one. Oh, if this is the first one, I see. You're going to confirm the next dietitian in-clinic visit with the family. So that'll be 2 weeks after the next diet period starts, or approximately 8 weeks from the date of this first visit.
Okay, and then after the visit, the dietitian's main responsibility is to give the study coordinator the fully completed dietitian visit log CRF to input into REDCap. And of course, if it's not on here, but if there's any follow-up needed with the patient's doc or the study PI, then to do so as appropriate.
And the study coordinator is going to transfer the information collected on that paper version of the dietitian visit log CRF into the electronic CRF in the REDCap database. If there were any adverse events or serious adverse events recorded, collaborate with the dietitian and PI to also complete that in REDCap, and complete any other CRFs in REDCap as needed.
And then this is just the study visit documentation. So there's the dietitian visit log CRF, AEs or SAEs, if necessary, and then again, subject disposition at study completion and discontinuation CRF again if there was some issue and that would be necessary. Okay, so we're going to jump on to the dietitian phone follow-up visits now. Let me just, I guess, stop there and see if there's any questions so far about what we went over with the in-person visits.
I don't have any.
No questions.
Okay, great. So 4 phone follow-up visits, like we talked about at the beginning of this call, and they happen around weeks 4 to 5 of each of the 4 diet periods. These are planned to be phone follow-ups by the dietitian only. If for some reason the clinical team would prefer that the patient needs to be seen at that time anyway, you could do this in clinic live. There's nothing to say you can't, but we had planned them as just phone follow-up visits as part of the study. Next slide. So visit timing and scheduling. The visit timing of these gets just a little bit tricky because you have to coordinate them around getting the 3-day diet diary back, and ideally having all of that information, the nutrition analysis information in hand, because that's going to give you the optimal, most efficient phone call, because you're not going to have to reach out to them again, and I think probably the optimal amount of information. So you want to schedule the phone follow-up no sooner than 1 week from the time that the 3-day diet diary was sent to Seattle Children's, because you need to have adequate time for Seattle Children's to input into the nutrition program and get it back to y'all. So around week 3 of the study, people are asked to fill out that 3-day diet diary and get it to you, get it to the coordinator, and then as soon as it gets into the coordinator, you take a look at it, y'all review it, make sure there's, it's detailed enough that Seattle could enter it into the nutrition program, work with the family if needed to fill in any holes or gaps, and then get that to Seattle right away. And the quicker that you all can turn that around and get that to Seattle, just the better it is for this midpoint phone call scheduling and to ensure that you all have it. So the phone calls ideally occur in weeks 4 to 5 of each diet period, but they should be no later than week 6. So even if you don't have that 3-day diary return from Seattle, because it took a while to get it from the family and then get it to Seattle, all of that, you still need to do the phone call by week 6. The nutritional analysis is expected from Seattle Children's Hospitals within 3 to 7 days of you guys sending them the 3-day diet diary. Again, I think they will definitely work with us, so let them know if there's, some real urgency based on phone call when you have the phone call. But, you kind of need to plan that it would take probably about a week to get it back. And like we said, if for some reason the analysis is delayed in getting back to the dietitian because it's just taken longer, you still should have that phone call and make the diet diary the recommendations nutritionally based on, your assessment of the diet diary and what you're seeing there from your expertise and experience. And we anticipate the phone calls will take about 20 to 30 minutes, so not too long. And then in terms of what happens at this visit, the point of this follow-up is to ensure that participants in the study are adequately supported, and that is looking at their nutritional adequacy and making sure there's no problems, making sure there's no significant symptoms or diet side effects, and again, looking at weight loss and trying to make sure that it does not exceed study limits. Now, they're not coming in for visits, but if you're tracking them, if the family is tracking weight on the app, you could, get a sense of are we concerned? Do we need to get them back because they're losing a lot of weight? Or, if the family is telling you that, they are concerned about it, then again, it may be reason to bring them back into clinic. Next slide. Okay, so from the dietitian's perspective, what you need for this visit before you get started is, again, the dietitian phone follow-up checklist for dietitians. So like we talked about it a little bit earlier, this is the companion checklist that goes along with the SOP for this visit. Super handy, kind of step-by-step walks you through just what you need to do. Doesn't have all the extra text. You don't have to use it, but I think it's really easy in terms of helping you know exactly what to do at the visit, and that's what's kind of pictured here, a little snippet of what's pictured here. Completed 3-day diet diary that the family had filled out. Ideally, you have the nutritional analysis back. You would have the participant contact log that you'll work with the CRC to fill out because, to record the contact that you had with the participant. Dietitian visit log CRF, the paper copy, again, to fill out the data. And the participant folder handouts if needed, again, to kind of refer people to things or point things out on the handouts as you're talking to them based on their needs and their kind of next steps as you're pushing them in the education on these diets.
We also have a checklist, of course, for the study coordinator, so we encourage you to use that as well. You're also going to need the completed 3-day diet diary. You can get that to the dietitian as well as the nutrition analysis from Seattle. You'll need the participant contact log to keep track of all the contacts you make with the participant, both for when you get the appointment set up, but also for when you are trying to contact them to set that appointment up. You might not be able to get a hold of people, and we just want to keep track of how often you're contacting them to make sure you get that set up. You'll need a paper copy of the dietitian visit log CRF for the dietitian to be able to fill out during the visit. Participant folder handouts, again, if the dietitian needs those to reference during the study, the visit with the participant. And the adverse events and serious adverse events and subject disposition CRF in case you need those as well.
So before the dietitian phone follow-up visit, the dietitian's responsibilities are to work with the coordinator to get the call scheduled, review the participant data, again in the Eureka platform, just like last time, look at their weight if they're tracking it, look at their symptoms, anything you're concerned about in particular, review the participant's medical record to see if there's any labs that would be needed nutritionally, to review any labs that have been obtained and might be relevant to your contact with them, and again, to note kind of what's going on with vitamin D level, if there's been any changes, labs, new information, etc. And then, importantly, review the completed 3-day diet diary and the nutrition analysis if you have it back. If you have any concerns about that, review it with the patient's doc or the study PI. And again, if you don't have that nutrition analysis back for some reason, then, review the 3-day diet diary and figure out, what your recommendations would be based on what you're seeing in that diet diary.
Before the dietitian follow-up visit, study coordinators are going to work with the dietitian to schedule the call. You'll actually schedule the call with the family. Again, let the family know that the call will take about 20 to 30 minutes. Get a backup phone number just in case something happens with the primary number that they're using. Contact the family up to 3 times to schedule the call, and that's where the participant contact log comes in handy to keep track of that. And so we have documentation of it. If you're unable to reach the family, notify the site PI and make sure that you document that on that log. And again, just document all the contacts you make. Evaluate the app adherence so that you can discuss that with the dietitian and make sure that that's addressed during the visit. Provide the dietitian with a copy of the completed 3-day diet diary, the nutrition analysis, and a paper copy of the dietitian visit log CRF. Ensure that the dietitian is able to access the Eureka platform so that they can review the patient's symptoms and weight data if that's collected.
During the follow-up visit, the dietitian's responsibilities are to assess how the family's doing with the diet, talk about challenges they're having, successes they're having, and provide them any additional resources that you think would be helpful to them as needed. Discuss symptoms reported in the app or that they're telling you about on the phone as well. Based on what you reviewed, if there's any concern about symptoms or worsening of symptoms, definitely, ask them about that. And then have any side effects that they're telling you about or worsening symptoms, talk to the primary doc or the site PI as appropriate. And then, again, just like we talked about, and for the initial in-clinic visit, look at their adherence on the platform. Are they doing well? If so, reinforce them, encourage them, tell them how smart that is, because it's going to mean that the study can really give them good data because we have so many data points back. If they're struggling with adherence, so less than 75%, work with the study coordinator, work with the family to problem solve what are the barriers, what's getting in the way, remind them how important the adherence to the tracking is, and try to help support them in improving it. Continuous dietitian responsibilities. So you'll want to provide an assessment back to the family of the diet based on the food pro analysis that you have. So the things to definitely include in your review are talking to them about the variety of food, the balance of the type of foods, the amount of junk food, even if it's, SCD, you can still do SCD sort of junk food, really packaged and foods like that are going in. Look at the amount of SCD yogurt intake. Is that sufficient? So think about those things in the feedback that you give them. Talk to them if you're noticing food groups that are lacking or suboptimal. Talk to family about that and think about ways to boost those things. Confirm vitamin D information. Again, vitamin D is very important. So we can kind of keep on touching on that point at each of the contacts with the family and making sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure it's sufficient for kids. And then confirm any other supplements or antacids that the participant might be taking. You want to evaluate the diet adherence. Again, how are they doing with following this diet? And if the family is struggling to follow the diet and having a lot of deviations or even some, problem solve with them. I mean, normalize some of it, right? It's impossible to be perfect all the time, but how can you help them have fewer deviations on the diet? And we'll talk in a minute again about how to answer those diet adherence questions. It would be the same across the in-person and the phone visits. And then, recommend diet changes or supplements as needed based on, and remember to point them to certain handouts if there's ones that you think would be helpful, again, based on what you're learning. So with each of these touch points, I mean, our goals are really around assessing how they're doing with the diet, continuing their education from wherever they're at to kind of continue to boost them a little farther in their knowledge of these diets, assessing weight for sure and any concerns with that, assessing any problems with symptoms, and supporting them as they do this. And then so there's no CRC responsibilities during the phone call because it's really just the dietitian talking to the family. After the dietitian follow-up, the responsibilities are if the unplanned weight loss is greater than 5% based on weights recorded in the Eureka platform, or if the family's not recording it, but based on if they're measuring it at home, then of course, based on what they're telling you, you'd want to discuss that with the site PI and the GI provider and determine if it's what the appropriate follow-up and monitoring would be if they need to come in for a weight, etc. Communicate any reports of new or worsened symptoms to the site PI and the primary GI provider. If follow-up with it yourself or the provider is needed, work to get that on the schedule if in-clinic follow-up is needed, and then record any necessary information on the dietitian follow-up CRF and make sure that's complete and give it to the study coordinator for input into the database.
For the study coordinator, the follow-up responsibilities are pretty much the same as the other dietitian visit. You're going to work with the dietitian to connect the participant with any needed resources identified during the call. So if they lost some of their handouts from the participant folder, just making sure that you figure out a plan to get those to them as soon as possible. And you're going to transfer the information from the paper copy of the dietitian visit log CRF to the electronic CRF in the REDCap database and complete any other CRFs that are needed in the REDCap database.
In terms of study visit documentation, all the same stuff as last time. The dietitian visit log CRF, AE or SA, adverse event or serious adverse event CRF if something occurred and it was necessary. Again, subject disposition, CRF if, again, there was some issue and that's necessary. And then also this time you do need the participant contact log so that you can record the contacts that you've had with the participant. Okay, so I had mentioned that we would get to this in terms of the assessment of diet adherence and the question addressing diet adherence on the CRF. So I just want to talk a little bit about how we're assessing that and how to answer those. Next slide. So first we have a direct question for the participant. And these are occurring on both the in-person clinic visits and the phone follow-up visits. So you want to use the language on the CRF to ask the participant, about the adherence to the diet. The participant, so it will be, and so you need to use the CRF and actually have that with you. And I believe the language is on the checklist as well. We can confirm that, but so you want to have that with you during the call and make sure you ask this question of the participant. So over the past 2 weeks, how many times have you eaten illegal foods? And they have choices from never to daily. Just to note that the questions, like I said, for adherence are the same during the phone call that you do, the phone follow-ups, as well as the in-clinic visits. The only difference is that the in-clinic visit is happening 2 weeks into the diet, so we're asking about that 2-week time frame. Like, since you started this diet for the past 2 weeks, how has your adherence been? Whereas in the phone follow-up, we're again asking from the beginning of starting that diet, and now it's been about 4 weeks. So over the past 4 weeks, think about the answer to this. So the questions are the same, it's just the time frame is a little bit different. And that wording is on the questions, on the right forms that you're using for the right visit. Next slide. There are specific questions for people who are on the MSCD diet to ensure that they're eating the specified amounts of the additional foods. So you would only ask these MSCD questions directly of the patient if they are on that diet. And again, you will see them on the CRF for the visit. So, you know, it's things about if they're eating sort of the target amount of the starches and of the sweeteners and, you know, the cocoa, etc. During those periods. Next slide. And then there's a question that's really just based on your opinion. So you don't ask the families this at all. It's just your impression as a dietitian based on your experience and what you've just heard from the family of how you think things are going. So again, don't ask the family this question. You can answer this after. You don't have to answer it right, you know, in the midst of things, but you do need to fill this out. So based on your conversation with the family, it's a 6-point scale. So it's just one question. There's 6 different choices that provided that, you know, give an overall gestalt assessment of their adherence. So in general, how adherent do you believe the participant has been with the assigned diet, whichever one they're on for the diet period? And it goes from excellent to, I don't know what 6 is, so like really poor, not at all adherent.
6 is not adherent at all.
Bottom, yeah, something like that at the bottom of the scale. But then there's a lot of just bullet points for each one that sort of give you some reference to, you know, how to think about this. What does excellent adherence actually mean? And so, you know, trying to look at that guidance and then, you know, use your judgment of where you think you would put them. And again, you're going to answer this at the in-persons and as well at the phone follow-ups. Next slide. Okay. So that before we jump into this next session around some of the SCD assessment and education touch points, just any questions about the in-person visits, the phone follow-up visits, what's happening, what you need to know to do?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Did someone have a question?
No.
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Okay, awesome. Great. So now the next thing that we just wanted to talk about a little bit more is some of the topics to, I think, you know, kind of consider and try to touch on, especially from the diet education and assessment side of things during both of these visits. So during in-clinic and phone follow-up. Next slide. I think these are important kind of touch points to think about. You may not cover all of these things. You know, I think, you know, some of these visits are, there's certain things you have to do for the study at the visits and certain questions you have to ask. And then there's some things that you have to base on your judgment of, okay, what does the family need right now to continue to optimize their success in the diet? But these are some important things to kind of just think about. So when people are starting the diet, you know, what to expect. Here are some common side effects to think about. You know, changes in stools. Again, there could be change in frequency, consistency, timing, even blood. We expect this. It doesn't mean the diet isn't working, you know, when this happens. And it can be, you know, highly related to changes in the microbiome or changes in fiber intake. So one thing to think about, talk about with families based on what you're hearing from them. Looking at hunger and lack of satiety clearly can be a frequent problem, especially for people when they're in the early stages of the diet. So they're only supposed to spend 2 to 3 days on the staging, the beginner SCD or the staging, right? And that you know would be a point where they may really be experiencing hunger due to the change and to the more limited food options. But then even once they're, you know, moving into the diet and they're on them, if they're feeling like they just can't get enough and they're hungry all the time, working with them both on the weight loss prevention handouts and then talking with them about 3 meals and 3 or more snacks a day and the types of things that they can snack on that might fill them up a little bit more, and how to do that. Another thing to think about is, you know, mistakes. Mistakes on this diet are going to happen. This is a hard diet to learn. Even once you know it, it's not, you know, it's hard to always avoid non-SCD foods. So really using mistakes as learning opportunities for families and helping them see that, you know, mistakes are opportunities to learn how to do it differently next time. So review the mistakes, Look for them, and even if they're not, even if they're not aware of mistakes, looking at things like overlooked ingredients, when they're hungry and no SCD food is available, kind of thinking about how to handle those situations. And then looking at when they're making a purposeful choice to, eat illegal foods, and thinking with them about sort of why they made that choice, what went on, what was the context, and how could you maybe handle it differently in the future. Next slide. So some common areas to think about troubleshooting during the call. First one is continued symptoms, and patients might be losing motivation to continue on the diet. So if they're continuing to have symptoms, again, it would be very early on, and so we, would encourage them, unless based on the symptoms you have concerns or their docs have concerns, to continue to press on for a little bit and see how things go. But things to assess would be balance in the diet. Are they eating only convenience, more junk foods? Are they eating really high volumes of fruit that could be giving them the type of symptoms they're experiencing? For people on the modified SCD, are they adhering to the limits, or are they really pushing those limits and going overboard, which could be creating symptoms? Looking at the symptoms that they're reporting now to previous reports and comparing it to sort of study expectations. People may be overlooking improvements that they're having that are happening really gradually, or have very different symptom expectations than what we, might expect as clinicians or the study team. And then again, if if any symptoms are concerning, to use the SOP and the guidelines, and follow up with their doc and study PI if anything needs to be reported or addressed clinically. Next slide. Another common topic to troubleshoot would be difficulty with recipes not turning out. These are, this is a new way of cooking, and that can happen, especially for people early on. So looking at what recipes are they using, encourage them to use cookbooks and recipes from the handouts that we've given them. They're all sort of tried and true, and things that, our dietitians, study parents, study patients have said, yeah, this works. It's pretty good. Suggest, modifications of non-SCD recipes until they gain more experience. So not jumping into complex SCD recipes that have all these different ingredients, but how could you help them take some of their favorite recipes or favorite things they like to make and think about them and turn them into, an SCD type recipe. Pull out the illegal foods. Look for places they can reduce kitchen labor. So for example, instead of making homemade mayonnaise, suggest to them some brands of SCD legal mayo that, they could use. And have suggestions for more simple SCD recipes. And, if there's things that you've tried yourself, that definitely can help. But kind of looking through, some of the things that we've given, so that, you have on hand some tips of some easy things that people can do to have success. Next slide. Another common topic to troubleshoot is around expense. It can be expensive depending, on what people are buying and what they're typically used to buying. It can be more expensive for them. Work with them on, have to balance sort of the cost of ready-made specialty foods with the time available they have for meal preparation, and that's going to be different for every single family. The more stuff that they're able to make themselves, the more cost savings generally. Remind families that at the beginning their grocery bill jumps because they're building their pantry with some of the resources and ingredients they need, and they won't have to do that every time. And then buying in bulk, batch cooking, freezing all can help with the expense, so they have the foods on hand. Next slide. So another topic to kind of think about in these visits, and a touch point to to work through with patients, is just really using the visits as an opportunity to advance patients' SCD education level. And so there's lots of things. Again, depends on where the family came in at and where they're at now when you're seeing them. But some things to consider. Making sure you're answering their questions. If you can't answer them, we have got great resources at Seattle Children's. Our dietitians can definitely help, as well as our parents and patient on the study. Address incorrect information or diet non-adherence that comes up as you're talking with them. Return to the handouts to review points in more detail. I know there's a lot of handouts, but our dietitians and parents and patients spent a long time trying to really hone the key information on those. So utilize them if it would be helpful to kind of push people forward in their education. Assess intake, make recommendations to improve improve variety in their food choices or appropriate substitutions for illegal foods they're eating. Revisit label reading if needed, and now that they have a little bit more experience with doing this, that can be helpful. Think about recipe substitutions, as we talked about, as needed for the family, how to help them substitute, pull out the illegal ingredients and substitute other things to continue to make favorite recipes and support the way they cook, and give resources to increase recipes in their rotation. So some families stick to the same recipes that they find work for several weeks, and then they burn their kid out on that. So kind of help them, increase their reserve of dinner of foods that they can make. Next slide. Okay, so another topic to consider, we're kind of like jumping through topics in these slides, but all things to consider in your interactions and contacts with the families at this touch point. This is sort of nutritious staples of the SCD. So these are some of the key things that, really are important for kids to be taking in and to think about and assess with families if they are, and what to do if they're not. So eggs, nuts, yogurts, fruits, vegetables are all, kind of staples of the SCD. And if kids are avoiding one or more of those staple groups, they're going to be at risk for, inadequate nutrient intake. So really important to assess and then think about what do you do. So for more picky eaters or kids who are avoiding, some of these major groups, you can add them to baked goods, right? Eggs and nut flours are requirements to bake on the SCD. So even if a child is refusing eggs and nuts in their whole form, often in baked goods, it's a way to get them in. Same with zucchini, carrots, blueberries, apricots, etc. Lots of ways to add, fruits and vegetables into baked goods. Try new ways of cooking the food, particularly fruits and vegetables, incorporating them into recipes. Try yogurt and smoothies with added fruit and honey. Try to make them, frozen fruit in them, various ways like that. Try to, freeze the yogurt or make more frozen-based yogurt. So that's another way to kind of think about it. And then try a variety of nut butters and flours, because different ones have different flavors and textures, and can, be more or less appealing to kids who are avoiding certain groups. So things to think about and problem solve with people around. Next slide. Jumping now to, like, if you're seen or hearing about problems solving, with SCD adherence. So we've talked about this a little bit, but just some things to think about and work through. Diet staging, assessing how diet staging was completed. Was it done correctly? And also assessing making sure families are following the right randomized diet, that they're doing the diet that we think they're on and we told them to be on, not the diet they want to be on. All those things are important to assess and then address. Reviewing the diet diary, asking detailed questions to them about the brands, the ingredients, when you're talking to them about food, to assess if there's any issues, that they may be even missing, that they don't know that they're, doing, that are non-adherent or SCD illegal foods. Working with families to assess what's going well and what's been challenging. Like we talked about, learning from mistakes, assessing what they were and really trying to use those as opportunities to teach and educate. Through all of the assessment of adherence, this is hard, and none of this is to, the focus is to be as supportive and empathetic as possible with families, and to help them know that, the step by step they'll get better at this. So not to be critical of the mistakes, but see them as learning opportunities, and celebrating any of the successes that they have. Again, going back to handouts, and also connecting families with others on the diet so that they can build a community. So there's definitely a Facebook site that is a community that we've given, I think, the links to, but we can definitely sort of, I think, let people know about. Tell me if I'm misspeaking on that, but I'm pretty sure we can do that. We have our patients and our parents who are great resources in this study, and another great way to connect families if they need that support of other families doing this. And then again, if non-adherence really seems to be an issue or a concern, then working with the coordinator and the site PI to figure out ways to address. Next slide. This is just some tips to avoid tempting non-SCD foods. So again, depending what you're hearing from a family, this might be helpful to think about in your contact with them. Reviewing how to manage social activities. There's a handout on that, and that can be really helpful for things, because that's a common context for, eating non-SCD foods. Working with them and maybe the patient, depending on their age, definitely the parent, on how to explain the diet to others. So helping people know how to explain it can be really helpful. So that, and practicing that ahead of time, so that you can make it a little bit easier, and you could get some support for avoiding non-SCD foods in social context. Next slide. Another one is building, helping to work with the patient and the parent on building ownership and confidence in the diet. It's the patients that have to own it in order to be successful. So really praising them for the work they're doing, really praising parents for the work they're doing, and for their efforts to take control of their health and to try a new potential solution for themselves to figure out if it works or not. Next slide. And then I know we're right at time here, so I'm not gonna go through these. We'll send you the slide deck. I think we just have, some information about common supplements that you should be considering based on what you're hearing from the participant. Sally, I don't think there's anything else in the deck, is there?
I think that's it.
Yeah. So if you want to just take a look at those common supplements, if that would be helpful to review those to consider. But the bottom line is that if you have any questions about any of this, what I just tried to do was touch on some of the key things that our dietitians in the study from Seattle said. These are common things that, when families come back in after starting on the diet, that we like to talk to people about, that we assess, common touch points that come up. So we tried to pull them into a few slides. But, again, they'll be more or less relevant for each family that you talk to. But if you have any questions, any concerns, anything that you need support with for either, the pragmatics of getting these visits done or related to SCD, please reach out to us. We're very happy to help. We're very happy to connect you with the dietitians in Seattle who are fantastic, with our parents and patients who are really great resources as well. All right, Sally, I'm going to stop talking. Let you wrap us up.
Okay. Any questions?
No, this all sounds
I don't
good.
think
Thank
so.
you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for
Good luck,
joining us.
guys. Yeah, good luck with the first visit.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, he comes in
Good luck.
tomorrow.
Okay, great. I'll send out the slides right after this is done, and then I believe if the recording worked correctly, I will send that to you as well.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.